48-hour art check, round 76. Here we are, 76.
I know. We're going to have to start installing bars in the bathroom so that, you know, it's like I gotta be able to stand up in the shower. I need something to hold on to. Legs are too weak.
At some point in time, we're going to run out of old people jokes because we're going to get into like longer than people live.
Yeah. Once we start
soon.
surpassing 100, and we're gonna need new material. We're gonna be getting into sci-fi realms at that point.
Right? Yeah, we'll just go with other alien species that live longer than we do.
For sure.
I mean, Yoda. We could go on a couple of years. You know. In whatever
we could,
whatever species Yoda is. So yeah. Okay, you wanna jump into the art check?
Yeah, let's rock it.
Okay, I have not done any art at all, but I do have. In the last 48 hours, I have gotten 7 episodes of different podcasts up. So I got 3 or 4 more on the 48-hour art check, and then I've also ripped MP3s of every Illo Talk episode that I have. So I have about 300 videos to go through for my own channel. So I'm gearing up, getting ready to launch an Illo Talk podcast in addition to this, and so that's kind of where I am. But I'd like to draw something soon, but I haven't done that for a few days.
Yeah, you got to get on the drawing stuff, but holy crap, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I know you come up with systems of automation and stuff, but it never ceases to amaze me, like the amount of stuff you're able to get done.
Yeah, it's still pretty time consuming, but yeah, I do like doing the podcast intro during the live show. Because that saves me from doing that as well, so it's nice. But yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah,
so.
It's mind blowing. Because we're all juggling a lot. You still have a young kid too, and another young kid. So you got 2 children, and a family and stuff. This is one of the reasons why everybody who's watching this, if you're not making stuff, you should make stuff, because we're both pretty busy people and we manage to make stuff.
I'm still amazed that you spend time with your family and have like an hour and a half long commute on the way home from work.
Yeah.
And get stuff done. So I mean, I get home at I walk half a mile to my house, so I get home at like 5:15. So, you know, anyway, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, so what did you get done?
So I did an hour and a half commute. On top of that, I also have done rough pencils for the first 6 panels, leaving one last panel that's going to be a huge thing. And this page to me is a really good example of why these are rough pencils and not final pencils. There's a lot about that last expression I kind of want to rework, but it's the basic structures there, so it'll be easier to like tighten up and polish up later.
Yeah.
But yeah, feeling pretty good.
Good. Yeah, it's looking good. I like it. You're still on a roll. As far as challenges for me, challenge is just the wrong word for it. But it's a lot of time consuming stuff. I called up Scott Circlin to get some slime recipes. So my 8-year-old and I got some slime. I went to court yesterday. Oh, this is big news. I went to court yesterday, and our adoption is finalized. So Maddox is permanently and legally ours. And that was a neat experience. And the judge was super nice. And Scarlett, who loves the limelight, he didn't legally need to, but he also made sure to include her in the interview process, and she's on the official record as a big sister, you know, and that was really cute. And then after he, you know, made his ruling, then Scarlett asked to be handcuffed by the bailiff who handcuffed her, and we have some fun pictures of that as well. So, but just lots of good stuff, just lots of good family stuff, but just time consuming. So not like a negative challenge, but just a time consuming challenge. But anyway, it's a huge weight off our mind, because it's been 4 months now, and it takes a little while to get all the legal stuff done, but it's all finished, and we've got some church stuff we're doing to kind of finalize that on the church side this weekend. So it'll be really nice. We're having a bunch of family up, and it'll be really good. So
that's amazing, man. Like I just putting myself in your shoes for a second. I can think that like the whole time up until that's finalized, there's probably in the back of your mind like I'm way too I'm attached.
Right.
But should I be attached, because there's always the possibility. So like that is huge.
Yeah.
That is a really huge thing.
And I mean, unless you're just inhuman, that worry is in your mind, but your reaction is, it's just a cute baby. It's totally my son, and at no point in time did I I got to try to distance myself to protect myself. And so it would have been devastatingly gut-wrenching had it gone a different way. Because we were all in. So it is very reassuring and nice, good sigh of relief. So
yeah, that's huge, man.
Yeah,
that's huge. Well, congrats. That's massive. My challenges have mainly been way less interesting than that. But so my band started recording a little bit more on our demo. We're going to be kind of sneaking it in. So like every other Tuesday we'll be recording. So we'll be like rehearsing 2 songs and then recording 2 songs.
Yeah.
Doing that until we have a decent demo. And that is very time consuming. So it's just the typical kind of time budgeting challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So as far as plans, I am going to draw something. I don't know what my plan is yet, because I've wrapped up a major half-year-long project and like a minor month-long project, and I've been kind of using the podcasting stuff as a buffer before I jump back into something else. But I think I might do like maybe a series of short animations, or I'm not sure yet. But in the next couple of days, I do want to get some visuals out, because I've been doing a lot of like keyword research and a lot of audio editing and a lot of kind of processing as far as like trying to optimize the process and stuff like that. And so it's been very extremely analytical, and I want to get back onto the kind of creative side of things. So I guess I'll decide tonight on what I want to do, and then I'll pull the trigger on it, and we'll see if we can get something kind of fun out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what that'll be. For me, my plans are basically to at least do the rough pencils for the last panel. So I definitely need to finish the rough pencils for this page. And then I'm gonna try to at least get the tight pencils for another panel.
Okay.
That last panel is going to take a little longer to rough out because it's a really long horizontal kind of close-up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be fun because it's like drawing a bunch of wrinkles and anger, which is always fun to do. So,
how many more pages of this little mini young Josh story arc is there?
Let's see. Probably. Let me see where I'm at. Because I should be. Sorry, I'm like looking through it. So this will be page 80. So that leaves about 20 pages.
Okay.
Maybe less. And then, like at this point, the page count that I have done is 81. if I'm including the covers that'll be kind of working as like chapter breaks. So, pretty excited. Like it's getting closer.
Yeah.
And so I think May's a pretty fair estimate. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is like with this style, like the rough pencils and the tight pencils kind of take a little bit of time, but the finals go really quick because it's not like heavy on hatching or anything like that. It's mostly open line, and so when you have the structure there, it works pretty quick to just knock them out. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, feeling good about it. It's kind of weird. It's weird to see it slowly creeping towards finish because this narrative will be the end of the first book.
Right.
And then
so at the close of this scene, basically that's when you wrap the book. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So.
Yeah.
But this one's a little more complicated. They always kind of seem deceptively simple, and then they're a little longer and heavier.
Yeah.
So.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that's good. Okay, so those of you that didn't see last episode, we are now going to try to make the podcasting easier by doing the kind of intro in one take of the topic. And so, but before I do that, do we have anybody watching right now? I haven't really checked, but if you are, make sure to share this live stream here so that we can get some people in the chat with us. And if you haven't yet, like and subscribe and all that jazz. And make sure to do that on the YouTube, as well as if you're following us on that podcast, leave us a review. Those are super helpful. Okay, so good. Hey, we got some people in the chat. That's awesome. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna take a breath and then try to do this intro in one go here. 48-hour art check. Best of podcast. In this episode, Josh and I talk about. I completely blanked what we were going to talk about. There's strike number one. What was our topic?
It's because you switched modalities and now you're suffering from the
task switching penalty. I'm leaving that in. I'm not going to edit that intro. That's perfect. So today we are going to talk about the task switching penalty. And the task switching penalty is something that I came across in an article, and it made a lot of sense to me. What it is this, is if you stay in a specific brain modality, then you can continue to switch things within that and you don't pay a penalty. But if you're jumping from creative to logical, or you're jumping from something exceptionally mathematical and ordered to something chaotic, or even if you just get distracted because somebody walks by your desk and needs to ask you a quick question, which is one of the worst things about working in an office, is that you could get into the groove and it doesn't matter how big your headphones are or what signs you put up. I literally had somebody one time, I put a portable whiteboard behind my chair in a bullpen with a sign that said, "Please do not disturb." They leaned around the chair, saw giant headphones, tapped me on the shoulder. I took my headphones off thinking this must be an emergency because this person is an adult who can read and can see with their eyeballs. And they said, "Hey, how's it going, Cory?" And I was like, "I want to punch you in the throat," because that was it. I said, "Well, as you can see on the sign, I'm busy, but I'm doing great. Thank you. I don't know. Did you need something? I just wanted to say hi." That was one of the most infuriating experiences. So anyway, but with that, it's interesting. So here's the thing. When that happens, if you're in the groove, if you're really flying and things are flowing and you're moving and you're going and it just feels like you're firing in all cylinders, even that little movement, that little distraction, that momentary use of verbal communication can throw you off for up to 18 to 20 minutes to where you get back into that groove. And so being in an office situation, or being in a home office situation, or being in a situation where you have your phone vibrates, or there's a notification that goes on, as soon as your mind goes, "Ooh, squirrel," then you are paying a task switching penalty. So, but the last episode, Josh, you talked about speeding that up because in your role as an art director, you have to go from negotiation to kind of internal politics to motivation to communication to creativity, and those are all very very different. But you've been doing it now for several years, and you said that you've gotten quite a bit faster at switching back and forth. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So what's interesting is there are things that I did kind of subconsciously because my first year art directing, and this is something I've shared before, but I'll share again. Like when I first got the gig as an art director, I panicked a little bit, and I emailed a couple friends of mine who had been one of them who had been my art director, and just asked him like, what do you like? How do you do this? You
Yeah.
know. And a lot of them were just like, stay true to your team, like be honest and try to just, enjoy having your hair go gray. And then I was like, are you like, okay, haha. And they're like, I'm literally like, I'm being serious. I'm not joking. Your hair is going to go gray your first year. And my hair started going gray. Like I literally, that was the first year I had gray hairs. And it sounds like one of those like weird, stories that somebody might casually tell, but no, it's true. Like I literally, it was that stressful.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest stresses of it, was like switching from like the creation side where you're doing graphic design and you're dipping into it to having to fix somebody else's creative work, for a salesperson, and like communicate and calm them down and kind of get that going. That's still creative, but then while doing that, being interrupted by staff who are like, the air conditioner is not working, or something like that. Just fires, constant little tiny fires that interrupt your day, to like working just analytics and data entry and political navigation. And by the time a day would end, my first year, I also didn't delegate enough. And so I would be there, 30 minutes early, and I would leave like 4 hours after work.
Right.
And it just burnt me out like after a year of it. But there are things I kind of developed, and I think kind of just almost out of a need for survival, to kind of learn how to categorize things into little chunks. We kind of talked about this a little bit before, like the microtasking thing I had talked about. So if you're curious, like listen to that episode. But I developed like little techniques to kind of help myself get back in the creative zone. And a lot of that is just batching things. So like, for instance, like, when approaching an art job where there's a lot of like data entry at the beginning, just get the data entry all done in a chunk, and then break and get to creative. Like doing things in bulk and chunks, and then not being afraid to kind of see it through to a logical stopping point, is a really good way. But also like priming yourself, which is weird, but like meaning, if you get in a creative workflow where you're like, I need 8 hours undisturbed to get this thing done perfectly, and you're in an office environment, you're going to be sorely disappointed,
right,
and frustrated. If you go into it thinking realistically, I'm going to have 15 minutes of this before somebody comes by and says hello, and then I'm going to have a natural pausing point, and like I'm going to have a way to get back into gear, kind of like pre-planning it.
Yeah.
Can actually allow for that kind of thing, but also just being in it and navigating, switching kinds of thought, you do get quicker at it. You get more effective at it. And I think it's akin to, I mean, I don't want to compare it to war and like like it's not like being a soldier, but you do hear these stories of people having to fire on all cylinders at war. And when they get out of war, kind of missing war because they're so on, like all your
Right.
instincts have to be on. It's like that, but not as dire.
Yeah.
But it's very similar where you get kind of used to living in this period of time where you're running a team, you're focused on aesthetics, you're focused on politics, you're focused on details, you're focused on the whole and the specific, and you're kind of switching cylinders and gears to the point where you do kind of get quicker at it, but when it's over, there is a little bit of a cost. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's specific enough, but that's
Well, it's
to
also
me that's
it's,
kind of what's
it's
been interesting about it.
it's kind of like you're gonna pay that price, whether you pay it in the
Yes.
moment or whether you pay it later. But you're gonna pay that price because I remember doing two different things as an art director. One was that I would sequester myself, and I just told everyone I'm going into a cave, and I could never do it for a full day, but I could do it for half a day, you know. And it wasn't at first that I was able to do this because when I first showed up, everything was on fire. There were no procedures or policies. Anyone could just walk in and demand anything of my team, and it was a ridiculous, chaotic nightmare. And it took me about 18 months to train my team and to train the rest of the company how to interact with my team to the point where we could anticipate needs and and serve them up early in a timely manner, in a reasonable manner, instead of always being reactionary. We became proactive. Getting my team and the rest of the company to that point allowed me to say, okay, everyone's good. Okay, if you need me, and it's an absolute emergency, then you can bug me. But other than that, I'm going to work on the branding for this thing. Like we would build a brand new line of guitars and we would have to brand it. And that's not like brand identity is not something that it's like an autonomic process and you can knock it out in 45 minutes. It's an exploration. And so I would go in and I would say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I would go in and I'd have 4 hours. Either situation, either where you're putting out a bunch of fires and you're handling a bunch of different stuff and you're juggling and whatever. And I feel like as an art director, you're often the kind of meat shield for your team. I always felt like there was just arrows flying in a constant barrage, and I was the shield that would just make sure that the people behind me didn't know that there were arrows, and that so that I would take all those hits and I would pay all of those penalties so that my team could continue to be productive. And then on the flip side, when you do get those kind of moments where I can batch a large chunk of time, it both has the same effect. And what my wife and I described it as is sometimes I would come home differently. So for example, routines are super helpful with task switching. We talked about this before where, I dedicate a space and a time to my art. And so my mind mentally is prepared. It's the same thing like my home. I am not in charge. My wife is not in charge. Like we are co-equal in our relationship in every way that we can possibly be. And so it's inappropriate in my relationship for me to come home and start barking orders. But at work, I'm in a clear hierarchy where there are people above me, there are people beneath me. And to make sure that everything's a well-oiled machine, I would be like, I need you to do this, and I need you to do this, and I need you to do this. What do you need? Okay, this is what I've got. Okay, great. Exactly. I'll do that. And sometimes I would get home if I got home too quickly, it didn't hit any traffic, and I didn't have that time to mentally switch. I would get home, and this is very early on in my marriage, and I'd be like, all right, honey, I need you to do this, and I need you to do this. And she's like, whoa, I don't work for you. Let's try this again. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm still in work mode. Like I hadn't switched over. And we got to the point where as soon as she was like, hang on. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong mode of thinking. I would just need to say, I'm sorry, I was in work mode. Let me take that again. she wouldn't be offended or hurt or anything. She would just
Yeah.
recognize that I needed to switch. And I'd switch gears and I would say, so I wanted to talk to you about this, and we need kind of a solution. I don't know what you think, but I was thinking something along these lines, and it was a more of a peer conversation.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of an interesting thing for a little while there. And now I'm much better. I'm able to identify home as home and work as work, and play as play, and it's but it was interesting for a while that my modalities, I was not aware of the need to be able to control when you switch, and it bled over in a negative way into my life, and would do the same if I were to act like I was in a family at work, because people would be like, we're not that familiar, like I'm not your friend, we're coworkers. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. But you do pay the price, whether you pay it in the moment, which is what I typically do, or after the fact, where there's a long time period where you're like, So yeah.
I mean, my my after payment's kind of weird, because by your description was very apt, where it's just like you're kind of like, do this. By fires, I just meant like little things, like every little thing that can go wrong in an office. The server's out. Okay, like you don't have time to like sit and assess it and think about all the different options. It's like you have to do that very quickly, and yet you have to think long term and short term and make split second decisions that are hopefully accurate, and be confident in them so you can lead people, because if you don't have confidence, you're not going to lead. But also not too confident, because you don't want to miss a potential red flag that you might be making the wrong call. You always want to be open and definitely rely on those team members that'll tell you when you're making the wrong call. But the point being, like, all of that's going on, all that jumble, and my first year was terrible, as you were describing yours, because I did have to restructure things, not only just for the company, but for my own management style.
Right.
And that's any first-time manager. You have to really like figure out the way that it's going to work for you to lead these people. But when I get home, I'm processing so many things, and I'm having to think so quickly on my feet, that there is just this, on my commute home, my brain is like in a scramble. And so intellectually, I know I'm functioning at like 40%, which is very frustrating for someone like me who, like, I love reading. I love getting really engaged. I love philosophy. I love like studying history and stuff like that. And there's this like kind of disconnection that I feel on my route home, and even with my art. Like, I really have to force myself to engage, because my brain has been firing so many different modalities for 8, sometimes 10, sometimes 12 hours, just nonstop until I'm out. That by the time I'm back, it's like the modalities have almost like beat each other up, and the brain's just not functioning. And that's kind of, to me, that's the payment that I still feel. At first, I did have a very similar thing too, where the work home structure was really hard to get used to, especially because my wife and I, like the majority of my our relationship, I had been running my own business. She was kind of the person who would go off and work somewhere. And I would be, holding down like, my own end, but from home. And so it was such a weird switch to kind of be the person who had to get engaged in office culture and get used to like mornings and stuff like that. But it is fascinating how that very quickly, that same exact challenge you were describing very quickly happened with us as well, where it's like, I'm not the manager here, and it's actually a relief, because it gets very tiring being the manager. And so it's nice not to have to be making all the calls, because sometimes that's one of the downsides too of the whole thing. So I don't know, it's fascinating. But the one thing I'll say about the penalty is it is flexible. It's not impossible to switch gears. And I think most of it has to do with organization, and routine. So it's like if you organize, if you batch things to where it's like, there's a bulk of your day that's going to be spent doing data entry, come up with a routine, like a flow, like where you're like, okay, I do email time, and then I do data entry time, and then I do design time, and then I cycle through it, through the whole thing. Once you kind of come up with a cycle like that, that could even be a 15-minute cycle that I just described, where you're switching to 3 different modes of thinking. And once it becomes a flow, it becomes like a workflow, and it's doable. It's the only thing that like Cory was describing that can kind of mess that up is when you're in that flow, if there's a spoke in the wheel,
Yeah.
which is the like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, I'm in this flow. Like, do
Right.
not mess this up because it's hard to do this thing. And now I'm juggling 20 things. So I don't know.
There's
But I
also,
definitely think that's,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's also a way to use this to your advantage. I have not gotten good at this, but one of the things that I've been attempting to do, and at times when I'm able to hit it, it works really well. You can use the task switching penalty to help you continue in a process. And the way that I've heard this described and the way that it works for me is there's a law of decreasing returns, right? And it's just a fact of life that if you spend too much time at the drawing table, your effectiveness begins to diminish over time. If you never take a break, if you never get up, it's little things like your back starts to hurt, you start to get a knot, you start to get a kink, your mind wanders a little bit more than it should. But it's also like the law of diminishing returns is also like you mow your lawn in one direction, you get 85-90% of the grass cut. You can cross cut it a second direction, but you're usually not going to cut it at a 45, a third, because there's just not enough return, right? And so one of the things that I've heard people do with this task switching is you set a time like 20 or 30 minutes, and then you set another time. So you're using like an interval timer so that you are hyper productive for 20 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And you do some push-ups or some pull-ups or get a drink of water. You stand up, move around, but you only do that for 5 minutes. And then you can hit and you can go 30 minutes again. And then you take another 5-minute break. And if you're doing this, and you go 3 or 4 rounds, and then you can take like 30 to 45 minutes for lunch or something like that, you can stay on a level of productivity that's significantly higher because you're not hitting a penalty because it's planned, but you are also not getting the law of decreasing returns because you can do these sprints, but you can't sprint a marathon. And that's been something I've been trying to get better at is using this task switching to my advantage rather than being beaten up by it, because I can take that 5-10 minutes and get some of my physical needs out of the way as far as some pull-ups, some push-ups, some food, a drink or whatever, and then hit it again, and I'm kind of energized based on that switching. But it can't be irregular. It can't just be like whenever I feel like it. It can't just be like, oh man, I've been here for a little while. I'm going to wander around my house for 3 hours and then, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, or I'm just going to play a video game for a couple minutes, which is something I do all the time. I'm like, I'm just going to take a little break and reward myself. I don't move out of my chair. I pick up a controller, and that's me for the night. That's like 6 hours later, and I'm like, oh, crap.
So, I think that is one of the reasons I started implementing like exercise into my routine too, because when you like have as long of a commute as I do and as long of hours as I work, which by the way is short compared to a lot of people.
Sure.
Like I know a couple people who work construction, and like when I think I worked a lot of overtime, I'm just like, I wasn't like welding a giant heavy item and having to bang it against stuff like for 10, 12 hours. I'm just clicking a mouse, or using a Wacom. So it's like but implementing like exercise into the routine when I'd get home, not only does that give me like a little boost of energy, but it does give me a little bit of a break. And then actually it's really weird, but like the thing that is also a huge return, as corny as it is, to like say you should spend time with your family and stuff like that. I mean, that's a trope, but it's true. But then there's also a return of that, because when I'm forced to actually pause the working life and then play like PJ Masks with my kid,
Yeah.
you know, like, and today we built robots and like out of like these foam building blocks, and the robots were attacking all these things in his room, and like doing that and then getting back to art, it's like it does help that switch to get back to like, okay, now I get to work on my stuff, you know.
Right.
And not only that, it also reminds me to play, which is really important for personal projects, because if you forget about play, it's like you forget the whole purpose of like a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why I still think Scott Circlin should come on our channel and tell us his thing about story, because I think a lot of it had to do with play, and I think that's actually an element we kind of waxed over. So we should have him back on.
Which I think is true for us, because I do enjoy doing it, and it is a fun thing to do storytelling. But at the same time, I don't know what that is. And this is a topic that I want to hit later on, which is society's negative feelings towards fun things. When I think fun things are super important, like for example, a lot of people in the community here have answered the question of why do you tell stories or whatever, almost excusing themselves for telling escapist fiction and telling silly stories. And it's like, thank heavens that you're doing that, because I would hate to live in a world where everything is serious and boring. Like, I don't like watching horror movies. I don't enjoy dramatic things because I get enough of that in my life. I want it, like, as a matter of like living as a human being, I want to be able to enjoy something. So, you know, it always bugs me a little bit that people are downplaying, you know, the fact that they're not doing something quote unquote important, when it's like, just because you've got anthropomorphic animals going around and goofing around in your comic does not mean that it's not important. It means it's fun, which might make it way more important than some super serious, you know, political diatribe or something, because like, otherwise, why are we here? I don't know. I feel like I'm ranting. We've kind of gone off into the woods, but
no. I think that should be a topic, though. Maybe fun should just be an actual topic we hit on. So it's funny. We just in the chat, there's Scott, who's a frequent supporter and friend of the show, is saying in the chats he's like proselytizing for us. It's awesome.
Yeah, we've got somebody new. We've got Spencer George.
We have a new guest, Spencer George, who was asking kind of what this whole thing was about, and I can't add much to what Scott said. Like, what Scott said in the chats is pretty dead on.
Though he's making me sound way cooler than I am. So that's
totally
nice.
Awesome.
That's nice of him. But yeah.
But Spencer said, accountability is a hot topic for me. I'm a third-year art student. Setting time aside for personal projects is becoming increasingly difficult. So, so Spencer, you got to join in, do a 48-hour art check.
Spencer, and I'll let you a little bit know about who Josh and I are. We've both taught at the collegiate level. Josh is now an art director for a promotional company and runs this comic and auto bio. And I've gone from being an art director, illustrator, designer, photographer, video guy to teaching college and doing things on the side. If you're looking for some motivation on those personal projects, we both have several videos on our YouTube channel where we kind of do these video essays or little conversations about that, and you should check that out. But we would love to have you involved, and for anybody listening and watching, you know, I think sometimes we assume that everybody knows what's going on. So it's really good that you said, "Yeah, I don't know what this is. It seems intriguing." The 48-hour art check is a fascinating little experiment that Josh and I started, and what it was we were doing these sprints on our personal projects where we'd go really hard and then burn out and then take some time off, and then go really hard and then burn out and take some time off. And both of us were working on kind of more longer form things. Josh way longer than mine, which my most recent children's book I've wrapped up, and I'm shopping it around now. But we said, hey, we should come up with a system where we can just do a little check-in. And it has been phenomenal. We've both been doing this for a long time, and this is the most consistently productive that I've been on personal projects. And the way that it works is this, is you find somebody else, they don't have to be doing the same thing as you, but you find somebody else who is also trying to work on a personal project. It doesn't even have to be in the same medium. It could be music and you're doing art or whatever. And you meet, we like doing it every 48 hours for a number of reasons, but basically you meet, there's some people that do it weekly, there's some people that do it every 2 days. And you just go over 3 things. You just say, hey, what have you done in the last 48 hours? What was hard about that? What was challenging? What did you overcome? And I think that part is really important to acknowledge that it's difficult. And then the third one is, what are your plans? What are you going to do in the next 2 days before we meet again? The interesting thing about doing that is it levels out the level of production so that over a period of time, you're getting way more done. But in any given day, it's not this like, neuron all or nothing, feast or famine, kind of freak out or crash situation. And it's been great. This is the 76th time that we've met doing this. And so that's quite a few months of doing this consistently, and we haven't missed. I don't think we've missed yet.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it's been really helpful, and it definitely when you say publicly a plan and 2 days later you have to actually answer to it, it does something really weird psychologically that makes you get stuff done. So there have been multiple times that like an hour before we go on, I'm like hustling so that I have something to show.
Right.
And that's good. I mean, that's a really good thing, because that's an hour of work or, a half hour, whatever amount of work that I wouldn't have had done.
Right. And like the other day, a friend of mine was on the show and we were talking afterwards, and he's aware that I do this and that it's a non-negotiable. And we talked till like 1:30 in the morning. And as he was leaving, he said, so you're going to go do some art now? And I said, yeah, I got to do it before I go to bed. And he kind of kids me about it, but the people in my life that understand me understand that my creation is a non-negotiable, and the 48-hour art check is kind of part of that. And then we also take this and we take the conversation portion of it. We cut that up and we put it into a podcast. That podcast is available on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, kind of wherever those are, and you can see those podcasts with the podcast notes kind of in the order that they are. On Josh's YouTube channel, it has a playlist. My YouTube channel, I have a playlist, and you can go to corykerr.com/48hr. And if you haven't yet, like and subscribe here. In the show notes of this video, you can see Josh's channel, like and subscribe there. And then also, wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, because it really helps to kind of spread the word. And our goal is to not be the only people that are doing this. Like Scott in the chats, he's meeting with somebody doing it. And it's super awesome. And Scott is mentioning that there's like 100 days of something is super helpful. There's a number of different challenges that can be really good. And we can kind of hit that on another day, another topic. We've kind of talked about it before, but appreciate everybody in the chat. Any closing thoughts, Josh?
Just glad to see our community and glad to see new people showing up in the chats, and it always makes this really fun. I am kind of curious, for those of you listening or like in the chats, like what do you guys do to kind of more effectively switch modalities to try to kind of limit that cost that you have to pay every time you're kind of taken out of the zone or out of like the thinking mode that you're in. And I'm kind of curious, like if you don't have a strategy, should you have a strategy? Like let me know like what you guys think. I'm curious. Other than that, I think I'm good. How about you, Cory?
Yeah, I'm great. I think that's good. We should call it. So special thanks to No Saboteurs for licensing the intro music, and you can see them at facebook.com/No Saboteurs. You can find Joshua Kemball's work at quarterlystories.com. Go there and you can see the first quite a few pages of the autobio comic that he's working on right now. And you can find my work at corykerr.com, including the poster that I have for sale right now at corykerr.com/shop. As well as if you'd like to see the podcast side of this thing, where it's edited down to just the relevant information, you can go to corykerr.com/48hr. And we appreciate everybody in the chat, and we'll see you guys in a couple days. We're out.
Yeah. Bye.